The clock on the wall ticked loudly, a sound that felt unnervingly deafening in the silent penthouse. Laura's fingers tightened around the glass of wine in her hand, the crimson liquid swirling lazily within. She hadn't even realized how much time had passed since she sat down to enjoy a rare quiet evening, one of the few she had these days. Her husband, Michael, had gone to one of his meetings, and she'd decided to take a moment for herself. The penthouse was everything they had worked for, a sprawling, modern space perched above the glittering city. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered an unbroken view of the skyline. Laura had always felt at peace here, surrounded by wealth, success, and the life they had built together. But tonight, it felt suffocating. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, breaking her from the trance. At first, she ignored it, likely another message from Michael. He often sent her late-night updates, detailing his busy schedule, his next moves in their growing empire. She set the wine glass down, but the phone buzzed again, insistent. She picked it up, glancing at the screen. Unknown number. Her pulse quickened. She didn't like answering calls from numbers she didn't recognize, but something in the pit of her stomach told her this one was important. With a shaky breath, she tapped the green answer button and raised the phone to her ear. "Hello?" she said, trying to sound calm, though her voice trembled. The voice on the other end was low, almost a whisper, and tinged with an urgent edge. "Laura. Get out, now. They're coming for you." Laura's blood ran cold. The line crackled, then fell silent. She pressed the phone tighter to her ear, waiting for more, but nothing came. No further explanation, no context. Just those few words. "They're coming for you." "Who is this?" she demanded, her pulse pounding in her throat. But the line went dead. For a moment, she sat frozen, staring at the screen in disbelief. The words echoed in her mind, over and over again. "They're coming for you." Her breath came in shallow gasps, her fingers gripping the phone so hard it threatened to slip from her grasp. Her mind raced. Was this some kind of prank? Had someone hacked her phone? But no, it didn't feel like a prank. The urgency in the voice, the chilling tone, felt all too real. She stood up abruptly, her heart hammering in her chest. The city lights outside blurred in her vision. She took a step towards the window, peering out into the night. The buildings were bathed in soft light, but there was a strange heaviness in the air tonight. Something was wrong, and the unease that had been creeping through her veins for weeks suddenly intensified. Her thoughts flashed to Michael. Where was he? What did he know about this? He'd been acting distant lately, withdrawn even. There were whispers, unsettling rumors, that she had tried to dismiss. But now, those whispers grew louder, demanding her attention. She walked quickly toward the hallway, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The glass walls of their penthouse felt as though they were closing in on her. As she passed the foyer, she caught a glimpse of the sleek black phone on the entryway table. Michael's phone. He must have left it here before heading out. A chill ran down her spine. She picked it up, swiping the screen to check for messages. A sense of dread washed over her as she scrolled through the texts. Business details, a few messages from colleagues. But then, there was one message that caught her eye. It was from an unknown number. She tapped it open, her heart racing as she read the contents. She knows. It's only a matter of time. Be ready. She felt her knees go weak. What was this? Who was she? And why was Michael involved in something so sinister? The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She needed to find him. To confront him. But at the same time, a part of her knew that something much larger was unfolding. Something beyond her control. Suddenly, the sharp sound of the doorbell cut through the tension in the room. It rang again, longer this time. Laura's heart leaped into her throat. She froze, standing in the center of the room, her breath shallow. Her first instinct was to run, to escape whatever this was. But she couldn't. Not yet. She had to know more. The doorbell rang again, more urgently now. Without thinking, she moved toward the door, her feet heavy with dread. She wiped her sweaty palms on her pants before reaching for the handle. As her fingers brushed against the cool metal, a wave of panic washed over her. Who could it be? What did they want? She wasn't ready for this. Her hand trembled as she turned the knob and pulled the door open. But there was no one there. Just darkness. Laura squinted into the night, her heart pounding in her chest. The hallway was empty, eerily quiet. She stepped forward, her heels clicking softly against the polished marble floor. Her pulse hammered in her ears. The city was quiet, too quiet. No passing cars, no sounds from the street below. It was as if the world had fallen into a dead silence. Then, she heard it. A voice. Low, familiar, almost comforting. But it wasn't coming from anyone she could see. Laura, the voice called softly, but it was no longer a whisper. It was a command, demanding her attention. She spun around, her breath catching in her throat. "Who's there?" she called out, but her voice came out shaky, unsure. The darkness around her seemed to close in. Then, she saw him. Michael. He stood in the shadows at the far end of the hallway, his expression unreadable. His face was half hidden, his features obscured by the darkness. But there was no mistaking him. Her husband. The man she had trusted with her life. But something was different about him tonight. The warmth she once saw in his eyes was gone. He looked cold, calculating. And there was something about his posture, his stillness, that sent a chill down her spine. "Michael?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What's going on? What is happening?" For a moment, he didn't respond. He just stood there, watching her with a strange intensity. Then, finally, he spoke. His voice was low, almost too calm. "Laura, you should have listened." The words felt like a punch to her stomach. She took a step back, her mind spinning. What did he mean by that? Why was he standing there, looking at her like that? Before she could ask another question, he turned and disappeared into the shadows, vanishing from view. Laura stood frozen for a moment, her breath catching in her chest. Everything inside her screamed to run, to get away. But she couldn't. Not yet. She had to understand. She had to figure out what was happening before it was too late. Laura stood frozen at the doorway, her heart still pounding, the words Michael had spoken echoing in her mind. You should have listened. What was he talking about? What had she missed? The hallway before her seemed impossibly long now, the dark shadows stretching unnaturally toward her. She glanced over her shoulder, but the penthouse felt too quiet, as though it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. She took a shaky step back into the apartment, closing the door softly behind her. She couldn't keep her mind from racing, from circling back to that cryptic phone call, and now, this, the eerie encounter with Michael. She needed answers. Her hand reached for her phone on the coffee table, still holding Michael's. Her fingers felt clammy as she opened the text thread with her husband, scrolling through the messages from earlier that day. Everything looked normal at first, business talks, updates about their upcoming meetings, the usual exchanges. But the last one was different. It was from an unknown number, the message sent late in the afternoon. You don't know what he's capable of. Trust no one. Her blood ran cold. What was happening? She'd dismissed these kinds of messages earlier, assuming they were some kind of scam or a random message from a disgruntled business associate. But now, she wasn't so sure. There was something deeper at play here, something dark and twisted that she had been blind to for far too long. Her fingers hovered over the screen, debating whether to respond, but she hesitated. Who could she trust? Her instincts told her not to trust anyone. Not even Michael. Not anymore. Her mind flashed back to their life together, the picture-perfect image they'd crafted, a successful business, a luxurious home, vacations in exotic places. The kind of life people envied. But underneath the surface, something had been rotting. She had ignored the signs, blinded by ambition and love. Laura shook her head, trying to clear the fog of confusion. She couldn't afford to be emotional right now. She needed to think logically. She needed a plan. An hour later, the sharp sound of her front doorbell cut through the thick silence of the penthouse once more. This time, Laura didn't hesitate. She moved quickly, her senses alert, every part of her on edge. She could no longer afford to live in the dark. Whatever was happening, it was coming for her, and it was coming fast. She opened the door cautiously, half expecting to see Michael again, standing in the shadows, his expression unreadable. But this time, it wasn't him. Standing in front of her was a woman, a stranger, but somehow familiar. She was tall, with sharp features and a confident air about her. Her dark eyes locked onto Laura's with unsettling intensity. "I need to talk to you," the woman said, her voice cold, yet unmistakably calm. Laura's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea who this woman was, but something told her that the encounter was no coincidence. "Who are you?" Laura asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She took a step back, instinctively guarding the threshold of her home. She wasn't sure whether to let the woman in or slam the door shut. The woman didn't flinch, merely offering a slight nod as if she expected this kind of reaction. "You don't know me," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. "But you will. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to warn you." Laura's brow furrowed. This was too much. Too many strange events, too many messages. She was starting to feel like a pawn in someone else's game. "Warn me about what?" she demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. "What is going on?" The woman stepped closer, her eyes scanning the hallway behind Laura as if making sure they were alone. "You need to listen carefully," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "There's a lot you don't know about Michael. About what he's been doing behind your back." Laura's stomach twisted. The woman's words hit her like a punch, but she couldn't understand. "Michael?" What was this woman implying? "Who are you?" Laura repeated, her voice rising. "And why should I believe you?" The woman sighed, her expression hardening. "I know you've been getting cryptic messages," she said, her voice suddenly more urgent. "I sent them. And now you need to hear what I have to say. Before it's too late." The room seemed to close in around Laura. She had no idea who this woman was, but her gut told her she wasn't here to hurt her. She was here with a purpose. And, somehow, that made it worse. "Michael is part of something bigger," the woman continued, her voice low. "Something that involves not just you, but a lot of other people. His business dealings, everything you thought you knew, it's all built on lies. And there are people who will stop at nothing to get what they want. Even if it means destroying you." Laura felt a chill run down her spine. This was insane. She had to be dreaming. There was no way this could be real. Michael? Her Michael? The man she had married, the man she trusted? Involved in something like this? The woman gave her a long, hard look. "You've been in the dark long enough. I can help you see the truth. But you have to trust me. There's no time." Laura swallowed hard. This wasn't the time for doubt. She had no other choice but to listen, to hear this woman out. "Okay," she said, her voice shaky. "I'm listening. Tell me what's going on." The woman glanced down at her phone for a moment before looking back at Laura. I'll tell you everything. But not here. Not now. They're already watching. It was nearly midnight when Laura found herself driving across the city, the woman sitting silently beside her. Every so often, Laura would glance over at her, her mind trying to piece together the puzzle. Who was she really? What had she meant by, "they're watching"? But the woman remained tight-lipped, only offering the occasional glance toward the road as they navigated the dark streets. The silence between them was suffocating, but Laura knew it wouldn't last. She had to know what was going on. She had to understand why her life had been turned upside down in such a short amount of time. They stopped at a small, nondescript building in a part of the city Laura hadn't been to in years. The area was run down, far from the wealth and glamour she was used to. "Here," the woman said, her voice barely audible. She gestured for Laura to follow her into the building. "This is where you'll learn the truth." Laura hesitated for a moment but then followed her, a strange mixture of fear and curiosity stirring in her chest. The door clicked open, revealing a narrow hallway leading into darkness. "Inside," the woman urged. "We don't have much time." Laura stepped into the building, the cold air hitting her like a slap. The sound of her heels echoing down the hallway felt unnervingly loud. The woman didn't wait for her. She walked ahead, leading Laura into a dimly lit room where a large screen sat at the far end. Several chairs were arranged around it. As the woman turned on the monitor, a series of images flashed across the screen. Laura's breath caught in her throat. She recognized the faces on the screen. "Michael," she whispered. "What is this? What's happening?" But the woman remained silent, watching as the screen filled with more and more disturbing images. Laura's stomach twisted. She was beginning to see what the woman meant. But it was more than she could bear to process. This wasn't just about Michael anymore. This was about something far darker, and she was just beginning to understand how deep the web went. The room felt colder now, though Laura couldn't tell if it was the draft seeping through the cracks in the old warehouse walls, or the chill creeping up her spine from what she had just seen on the screen. She sat there frozen, the images still flashing in her mind: Michael, her husband of 10 years, in a clandestine meeting with men she didn't recognize. Their faces blurred, their conversation muted. But the body language was clear: secrecy, tension, and negotiation. On the table between them were briefcases and folders, documents she could only assume weren't part of any legal business. And then there was the final image, the one that left her breathless. Michael with her. The mistress. The same woman who, months ago, Laura had suspected but could never prove. They were close, too close, in a private jet, champagne in hand, their fingers entwined. The timestamp read just 3 days ago. Her stomach turned. She wanted to scream. Cry. Run. Anything but sit here, trying to process the betrayal unraveling in front of her. But the woman sitting across from her, Dahlia, as she'd finally introduced herself, watched her in silence. No sympathy. No judgment. Just waiting. Finally, Laura found her voice. "Why are you showing me this? What do you want from me?" Dahlia leaned forward, her tone low but steady. "Because you're not just Michael's wife. You're the one he needs to get rid of next. And if you don't believe me, keep watching." She picked up a remote and clicked again. A video began to play. Grainy surveillance footage from what looked like a parking garage. Michael stepped into the frame. A man approached him, tall, muscular, wearing a gray hoodie. They exchanged words Laura couldn't hear, but then Michael pulled out an envelope. The man opened it, checked its contents, and nodded. Then Michael said something that made Laura's entire body go numb. Dahlia had added subtitles. "Make it look like an accident. No questions. No connections. Just get it done." Laura's hand flew to her mouth. She blinked rapidly, trying to process what she was reading. What she was seeing. He wasn't just cheating. He was planning to kill her. "I don't understand," Laura whispered. "Why? Why would he?" "Because of the money," Dahlia interrupted coldly. "Because of the company. Because of what you know, or what he thinks you know. And because you, Laura, are the last obstacle between him and full control." Laura felt like the room was spinning. Her mind reeled back to their recent conversations, how Michael had been so insistent on updating their wills. How he'd pushed for full power of attorney during her short hospital stay after the car accident. How he'd asked about her offshore accounts, something he'd never shown interest in before. "You said, full control," Laura said, suddenly alert. "You mean our businesses? Our assets?" Dahlia gave a humorless smile. "Not our businesses. Just yours." Laura's brow furrowed. "You started them. You funded them. You built them from scratch before Michael even came along. But over the years, you started trusting him more. Letting him sign. Giving him access. Piece by piece, he took control." Laura's voice was barely a whisper. "He couldn't. He could. And he did." Dahlia's tone was sharper now. "I used to work in his finance team. I saw the shell accounts. The transfers. The way he changed ownership under your nose. You were too busy running the front end of the company to see what he was doing behind the scenes. And you just let him?" Laura snapped. "No," Dahlia said quietly. "That's why I'm here." Laura's head spun. "Why are you helping me? What do you gain?" Dahlia hesitated, for the first time showing a flicker of emotion. "Because I know what it's like to be used. Betrayed. I tried to stop him before. I confronted him. And the next day, my apartment was broken into. My laptop stolen. My bank accounts frozen under suspicious fraud claims." She paused. "I lost everything." Laura exhaled shakily, her chest tightening. This was bigger than betrayal now. This was premeditated theft. Conspiracy. Possibly murder. "What do I do?" she asked, feeling small for the first time in years. Dahlia stood. "You disappear. At least for now." The next 24 hours were a blur. Laura didn't go home. She didn't call anyone. She handed her phone to Dahlia, who promptly dismantled it and dumped it into the harbor before giving Laura a burner. They drove through the night, leaving the city far behind. At sunrise, they arrived at a remote cabin in the mountains, one of Dahlia's hideouts, stocked with essentials, cold storage, even a backup generator. There was no Wi-Fi, no cameras, no cell signal. Perfectly invisible. But being physically safe didn't mean being emotionally prepared. Laura sat by the dusty fireplace that evening, staring into the cold ashes as Dahlia worked on her laptop across the room. "You said he was going to kill me," Laura murmured. "Yes. Why not just divorce me?" Dahlia didn't look up. "Because he knows what you're worth. And he doesn't want to split it. Especially not after what he did to manipulate the paperwork." Laura shook her head. "How can someone I loved, someone I built a life with, just decide I'm disposable?" Dahlia finally looked at her, her gaze softening for the first time. "Because some people only love the power you give them. Not the person you are." That night, Laura barely slept. Her dreams were fragmented, visions of her wedding day, Michael's hand in hers, morphing into a courtroom, then a coffin. By morning, she made a decision. "I want to fight back," she told Dahlia, standing at the cabin's door, her jaw set. "I'm not running for the rest of my life." Dahlia nodded slowly. "Good. Because I have something that might help." She pulled up a folder on her laptop. Inside were hundreds of documents, bank statements, emails, recorded calls. "I've been collecting these for months," she explained. "Hoping I'd find someone who'd believe me. Someone who could do something with it." Laura scrolled through the files, her eyes narrowing. "Some of these are explosive. Offshore laundering. Bribery. He's connected to people I've never even met." "Exactly. But the real problem is proving it's him. He's careful. He doesn't leave digital fingerprints. That's where you come in." Laura looked up. "Me?" Dahlia nodded. "You were inside. You know the patterns. You have access to old systems, codes, private records. With your help, we can finish building the case." A spark lit in Laura's chest. For the first time since this nightmare began, she felt something stronger than fear. Purpose. Over the next week, the two women worked in silence and in sync. Laura guided Dahlia through years of archived records, found password-protected documents hidden in old backups, and pieced together the timeline of Michael's rise, and Laura's systematic erasure from the empire she had built. The deeper they dug, the darker it got. Bribes to foreign officials. Hidden camera footage of boardroom meetings. A secret slush fund used to pay off employees who knew too much. And, most damning, an altered version of Laura's will, digitally signed using a copied signature and time-stamped the night before her accident. "He was going to finish it then," Laura whispered. "The crash. It wasn't an accident." Dahlia nodded grimly. "We're running out of time." On the 10th day, Laura opened her burner phone and sent a single, anonymous email. It went to a well-known investigative journalist, accompanied by a file marked, "If I disappear, this is why." She included only part of what they had found. Enough to ignite the flame. The rest would follow when she was ready. That night, while watching the news from a tiny TV with a barely functioning antenna, she saw it. Breaking: anonymous whistleblower leaks financial documents tied to CEO Michael Kavanaugh, authorities begin probe. Laura's hands trembled. It had begun. But the fight wasn't over. Dahlia turned to her, eyes sharp. "Now comes the dangerous part. He'll know it's you." Laura nodded, jaw clenched. "Then let him come." The sound of shattering glass snapped Laura awake. It was just after 3 a.m. Her heart thudded against her ribs as she sat bolt upright on the couch in the cabin's main room. A second sound followed. Something metal falling onto the wooden floor. Then silence. Dahlia had installed motion sensors outside. There were no alarms blaring. So either the system had failed, or whoever was out there knew exactly how to avoid it. Laura didn't waste a second. She silently rose, bare feet gliding across the floor. The room was cloaked in darkness, but she knew her way around the cabin now. She reached under the couch, pulling out the stun baton Dahlia had taught her to use a few days earlier. She pressed her back to the wall, her breath shallow. Another creak from the back door. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Not animals. Not Dahlia. Someone else was inside. She heard the door open fully now, no attempt to stay silent anymore. Then a voice. "I know you're here, Laura. No need to hide." Male. Confident. Calculating. Her blood turned to ice. It was Michael. 10 days ago, she'd seen the news anchor say his name out loud. The moment her anonymous leak made headlines, she knew there was no going back. Now, here he was. In the shadows of this off-the-grid cabin. No guards. No lawyers. No press. Just him. And her. "I told you," Michael's voice echoed, "this was going to end one way or another. You were never supposed to see any of it. You were supposed to trust me." Laura stepped from behind the wall, baton in hand, her stance rigid. And I did, she said. That's how you almost got away with everything. He smiled darkly. Almost. He took a step toward her, then stopped when he noticed the weapon in her hand. You're not a killer, Laura. No, she said. But I'm not the woman you used to know either. His smile vanished. What do you want? She asked, keeping her voice even. Why come here? You're being investigated. You're being exposed. What could possibly be worth risking it all? Michael's jaw tightened. Control. You don't understand, Laura. This wasn't just about the money. You left cracks everywhere. Emotional ones. Legal ones. You thought you were untouchable. But you're not. I built the second half of that empire while you smiled for cameras. I kept it afloat. And you rewarded me by planning to kill me? I had no choice. Those 4 words hung in the air like poison. No choice, she repeated, her voice rising. You drugged me. You sabotaged the car. You signed documents in my name. And you say you had no choice? Michael's eyes darkened. You weren't supposed to survive. Before she could speak, another figure stepped into the doorway behind him. Dahlia. She held a revolver at her side, aimed low but ready. Her eyes flicked to Laura, then to Michael. I should have known you'd track us, she said to him. But showing up here alone? That's not like you. Michael let out a short, cruel laugh. Who says I'm alone? That's when the lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the room whole. Laura's body tensed. Dahlia shouted, "Get down," just as something slammed through the window, metal and glass bursting across the room. A flashbang. Laura's ears rang. She fell to the floor as white light seared her vision. Then came boots, heavy ones. Multiple footsteps. More than one man. Michael hadn't just come to confront her. He came to finish the job. The next few minutes were chaos. Shouts. Scrambling. Gunfire, short, controlled bursts. Laura crawled behind the couch, stunned but alive, while Dahlia returned fire with expert precision, ducking and moving, sweeping the room. Michael shouted over the noise. No one gets out until that drive is destroyed. I want her gone. Laura clutched the small encrypted USB drive that hung around her neck. It held the final files, proof of money laundering and human trafficking tied to Michael's business deals. The kind of evidence that could bury him and every partner he had. That's why he came. Not just to kill her, but to erase the truth. Laura's panic turned to adrenaline. She remembered the emergency escape hatch under the cabin's storage room. Dahlia had shown it to her on their second night, just in case. She made a break for it. Crawling. Dodging. Praying. She reached the trapdoor, yanked it open, and slipped down into the crawl space just as another shot tore through the floor above her. For an hour, she didn't move. Not even as footsteps paced overhead. Not even when someone called her name. Then silence. She waited longer. When she finally emerged, covered in dirt, scraped and shaken, the cabin was empty. Burnt. Torn apart. But empty. Dahlia was gone. So was Michael. The next day, Laura checked in using a burner laptop at a remote motel. She uploaded a duplicate of the USB drive to 3 encrypted clouds, then sent an anonymous tip to the journalist again. Subject line, "They found me." Going dark. Attached was a new file. And a name. One Michael hadn't expected her to discover. The twist. While hiding in the crawl space, Laura had gone through her phone's secret photo cache, images she'd taken months ago and forgotten. In one of them, she saw something strange. A man standing in the background of a gala they'd attended. She remembered him vaguely. a business partner Michael never formally introduced. But when she zoomed in, her breath caught. It was her lawyer. The one helping with the company's restructuring. The same man who had drawn up the documents that had quietly shifted assets from her name to Michael's. The betrayal went even deeper than she thought. Michael hadn't done this alone. He had help. And the trail of corruption extended beyond her husband, into her legal team, her financial advisors, and perhaps even some members of her own board. This wasn't just a personal attack. It was an organized takedown. That night, Laura left the motel and crossed into Canada using false documents Dahlia had prepared earlier. She had just enough time to send one more email. Not to a journalist. To the FBI. She was done hiding. It was time to go to war. The chill of the Canadian morning seeped through the walls of the secluded cabin, but Laura's thoughts were elsewhere. The events of the past weeks played over in her mind: betrayal, survival, and the shocking revelations about Michael's web of deceit. Now, with the evidence in her possession and the authorities alerted, the question remained: what would be the cost of justice? A new ally. As Laura sipped her coffee, the burner phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. The text was brief: meet me at the old train station at noon. Come alone. Despite the risks, Laura felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this was the ally she needed to bring Michael down. At the station, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Agent Thompson, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for integrity. He had been following Michael's activities for years but lacked the evidence to act. Laura's information was the missing piece. The web unravels. With Laura's cooperation, Agent Thompson initiated a covert operation to dismantle Michael's empire. They traced financial transactions, identified complicit associates, and gathered testimonies from victims of Michael's schemes. Each discovery painted a clearer picture of the extent of the corruption. However, as they delved deeper, they uncovered a disturbing truth: Michael's influence extended into law enforcement and the judiciary. Several officials had been bribed or coerced into silence. The challenge was greater than anticipated. AheCounseling.com. Betrayal within. One evening, while reviewing documents, Laura noticed discrepancies in the files provided by Agent Thompson. Confronting him, she discovered that he had been feeding information to Michael, hoping to secure a deal for himself. The betrayal cut deep, but Laura remained resolute. She turned to Dahlia, who had been in hiding since the attack on the cabin. Together, they devised a plan to expose both Michael and Agent Thompson. They leaked evidence to international media outlets, ensuring the story couldn't be suppressed. The fall. The public outcry was immediate. Protests erupted, demanding accountability. Under pressure, authorities launched an independent investigation. Michael was arrested, along with several of his associates, including Agent Thompson. The trial was a media sensation, revealing the depth of the conspiracy. Laura testified, her voice steady as she recounted the horrors she had endured. Her courage inspired others to come forward, leading to additional charges and convictions. A new beginning. With justice served, Laura sought to rebuild her life. She established a foundation to support victims of white-collar crimes, using her experience to advocate for systemic reforms. Though the scars remained, she found purpose in helping others navigate the aftermath of betrayal. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as Laura took the stand. The culmination of months of investigation, betrayal, and resilience had led to this moment. Facing Michael, her once beloved husband turned adversary, she steadied herself to recount the harrowing journey that had brought her here. The trial begins. The prosecution presented a compelling case, detailing the intricate web of deceit Michael had woven. Evidence of financial fraud, forged documents, and attempts on Laura's life painted a damning picture. Witnesses, including former associates and victims of Michael's schemes, testified, corroborating the prosecution's narrative. Laura's testimony was the linchpin. She spoke with clarity and conviction, recounting the emotional and psychological toll of Michael's betrayal. Her words resonated with the jury, humanizing the abstract crimes and highlighting the personal devastation wrought by Michael's actions. The verdict. After days of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict, guilty on all counts. Michael was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, his empire dismantled, and his reputation irrevocably tarnished. Rebuilding and advocacy. In the aftermath, Laura channeled her experience into advocacy. She established a foundation aimed at supporting victims of white-collar crimes, providing resources and legal assistance to those navigating similar betrayals. Her story became a beacon of hope, illustrating the power of resilience and the pursuit of justice. Reflection. As Laura stood outside the courthouse, the weight of the past lifted, replaced by a sense of closure and purpose. Her journey, marked by pain and perseverance, had not only led to personal vindication but also paved the way for systemic change. Epilogue. Laura's story serves as a testament to the strength of the human spirit. In the face of profound betrayal, she emerged not as a victim, but as a catalyst for change, transforming personal tragedy into a force for collective good.